Have you ever stopped to consider the invisible trail you leave behind every single day? Every time you unlock your smartphone or tap a credit card or pass a traffic camera, you are etching a permanent mark into the digital ether. We like to believe that our private lives are truly private and that our secrets can be buried deep within the recesses of our minds where no one can reach them. But in the modern age, true anonymity is a myth that we tell ourselves to sleep better at night. The reality is that we are constantly broadcasting our location and our habits and our desires to a network of silent observers that never sleep and never forget. This digital shadow is usually harmless, a mere collection of data points used to sell us shoes or predict the weather. But for those with dark intentions, this electronic footprint can become a noose that slowly tightens around their neck. Today, we are diving into a case where a carefully constructed alibi crumbled not because of a witness or a fingerprint, but because of the silent testimony of devices that the suspect wore on his own body. This is the story of a crime that was almost perfect, and the digital breadcrumbs that led detectives through a maze of lies directly to the truth. The story begins in the quiet and affluent suburb of Silver Creek, just outside of Portland, Oregon. It was November of the year 2018. Silver Creek is the kind of place where neighbors know each other by name, and the crime rate is virtually non-existent. The streets are lined with Douglas fir trees that drip with the constant Pacific Northwest rain, creating an atmosphere that is both cozy and slightly claustrophobic. It is a town where people move to escape the chaos of the city and to raise their families in safety. But that sense of security was shattered on a gloomy Tuesday morning when 26-year-old Elena Rodriguez failed to show up for work. Elena was a graphic designer known for her punctuality and her dedication to her career. She was rising fast in a local marketing firm and had never missed a day without calling ahead. Her desk remained empty that morning, and her phone went straight to voicemail. By noon, her coworkers were worried enough to call her parents, who lived 2 hours away. By evening, the worry had turned into a panic. Her parents drove to her apartment complex, finding her car parked in its usual spot. Inside the apartment, everything seemed normal. There were no signs of a struggle, and her purse was on the counter, but Elena was gone. The initial response from the Silver Creek Police Department was standard for a missing persons case involving an adult. They suggested she might have taken an impromptu trip or needed some space. But her friends and family knew better. Elena was not impulsive. She lived by a strict schedule and maintained constant contact with her sister. As the hours turned into days, the police began to take the disappearance seriously. They canvassed the neighborhood and spoke to neighbors and checked local hospitals. But in the physical world, there was absolutely nothing to go on. No witnesses saw her leave, and no security cameras caught her movements. Enter Detective Sarah Miller, a veteran investigator with a background in the growing field of digital forensics. Miller was known around the precinct for her meticulous nature and her ability to find patterns where others saw only noise. She requested the case file 3 days after Elena vanished, sensing that time was running out. Miller knew that in the modern era, a lack of physical evidence usually meant the evidence was hiding on a server somewhere. She immediately shifted the focus of the investigation from the physical streets of Silver Creek to the digital highways that Elena traveled every day. Detective Miller started by building a profile of the last 24 hours of Elena Rodriguez. She subpoenaed phone records and bank statements. The last physical sighting of Elena was at a coffee shop near her apartment at 4 in the afternoon on Monday. She bought a latte and a scone and paid with Apple Pay. After that, she went home. Her phone activity ceased completely at 7 in the evening. This sudden silence was the first red flag. For a young professional who lived on social media to go completely dark at 7 at night was highly unusual. It suggested that something or someone had intervened. The investigation naturally turned to the people closest to Elena. At the top of the list was her ex-boyfriend Mark Stevens. Mark was a charming and intelligent software engineer who had dated Elena for 2 years before they broke up 3 months prior. The breakup had been described as amicable by Mark, but friends of Elena told a different story. They said Mark was possessive and had trouble letting go. He had been seen parked outside her apartment complex weeks after the split. When Detective Miller brought him in for questioning, Mark was calm and cooperative and seemingly heartbroken. Mark Stevens had a rock-solid alibi. He claimed that on the night Elena disappeared, he was at home alone binge watching a science fiction series. He provided his Netflix login history, which showed episodes playing back-to-back from 6 in the evening until midnight. He even described specific plot points from the episodes to the detectives. He handed over his phone voluntarily, saying he had nothing to hide. A preliminary check of his phone showed no calls or texts to Elena on the day she vanished. On the surface, he appeared to be an innocent, grieving ex-boyfriend. However, Detective Miller was not convinced. There was a slickness to Mark that unsettled her. His answers were too rehearsed, and his helpfulness felt performative. She decided to dig deeper into the digital life of Mark Stevens. While his phone seemed clean, Miller knew that the absence of evidence is often evidence itself. She noticed that his location history for that night had been manually disabled. Mark claimed he always kept it off for privacy reasons, which was a plausible excuse for a software engineer concerned with data security. But Miller saw it as a convenient black hole. The breakthrough required a different angle. If Mark was a tech-savvy killer, he would know how to scrub his phone and manipulate his computer logs. But Miller knew that technology is an ecosystem. Devices talk to each other in ways that users often forget. She obtained a warrant for the infotainment system of Mark's car, a late-model sedan equipped with sophisticated navigation and telemetry features. Mark had not thought to wipe the car's internal computer. When the tech unit extracted the data, they found something that contradicted his story entirely. The car's internal log showed that the engine was started at 8:15 in the evening on the night of the disappearance. This directly contradicted Mark's claim that he was on his couch watching TV from 6 to midnight. The vehicle traveled 12 miles north, leaving the suburb of Silver Creek and entering the dense forest roads near the Columbia River Gorge. The car stopped for 45 minutes before returning home. When confronted with this discrepancy, Mark remained cool. He claimed he had forgotten about a late-night drive to clear his head and that he left Netflix running while he was out. It was a pivot, but a weak one. Miller now had him at a location he had previously omitted. But a car driving to the woods is not proof of murder. They needed to place him with Elena or find her remains. The area where his car stopped was vast and rugged, covered in thick underbrush and tall pines. A physical search would take weeks and might yield nothing without a precise target. Miller needed to narrow down the search radius. She needed to know exactly where he stepped once he got out of that car. This is where the investigation turned to the most innocuous piece of technology, involved the fitness tracker. Mark was a fitness enthusiast who wore a high-end smart watch. During the initial interview, he was wearing it. Miller realized that while Mark had disabled location services on his phone, he might have forgotten about the passive data collection of the watch. The warrant was expanded to include the cloud data associated with his fitness account. The data they received from the company was a goldmine of biometric and location information. The fitness watch data painted a damning picture. At 8:45 in the evening, the exact time his car was parked in the woods, the watch recorded a spike in heart rate. It went from a resting 60 beats per minute to over 120. This indicated intense physical exertion. Furthermore, the watch had a built-in altimeter and GPS receiver that logged his coordinates every minute during a workout or period of high activity. Mark had not started a workout manually, but the watch's auto-detect feature had triggered due to his elevated heart rate. The GPS coordinates from the watch created a precise map of his movements in the woods. It showed him walking 300 yards off the main, logging road into a dense thicket. Then the data showed him staying in a 20-foot radius for nearly 30 minutes. His heart rate remained high the entire time, consistent with the physical labor of digging. Then the track showed him walking back to the car. The digital trail was no longer a vague shadow. It was a neon sign pointing to a specific patch of earth. Armed with these coordinates, Detective Miller organized a search team. They arrived at the location on a cold, misty morning. The woods were silent and imposing. Using the GPS data, they navigated through the wet ferns and mossy trees. It did not take long. In the exact spot indicated by the watch, the ground was disturbed. Under a layer of freshly turned soil and pine needles, they found a shallow grave. Tragically, the body of Elena Rodriguez was inside. The digital witness had led them straight to her. But the digital trail did not end there. Buried with Elena was her own cell phone, which had been smashed with a heavy object. The screen was shattered and the chassis was bent, but the internal memory chip was miraculously intact. The forensics lab went to work on the damaged device. What they recovered was the final nail in the coffin for Mark Stevens. It was a voice memo recorded at 7:30 on the night she died. It captured an argument between Elena and Mark inside her apartment, proving he was there despite his alibi. The audio was chilling. Mark could be heard pleading with her to get back together, followed by the sounds of a struggle. The recording ended abruptly. This evidence, combined with the car telemetry and the fitness watch data, destroyed every defense Mark had constructed. He was arrested and charged with first-degree murder. The arrogance of his intellect had been his downfall. He thought he could outsmart the police by manipulating his phone and computer, but he forgot about the silent sensors on his wrist and dashboard. During the trial, the prosecution presented the digital timeline as the star witness. They showed the jury the Netflix logs, which were proven to be automated playback without a viewer present. They displayed the map of the car's journey. And most impactfully, they showed the heart rate graph from the watch overlaid with the timeline of the burial. It was a cold and mathematical proof of a passionate and brutal crime. Mark Stevens sat in the courtroom, pale and silent, watching his own devices testify against him. The defense tried to argue that the digital evidence was circumstantial. They claimed the watch data could be interpreted in various ways and that the GPS had a margin of error. But the precision of the coordinates leading to the body was irrefutable. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours. Mark Stevens was found guilty on all counts and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The case became a landmark in the state for the use of wearable technology in homicide investigations. The aftermath of the case left a deep scar on the community of Silver Creek. The idea that such a calculated crime could happen in their safe haven was terrifying. But there was also a sense of justice served. Elena's family, though heartbroken, expressed gratitude for the technology and the detectives that brought their daughter home. They started a foundation in her name to support women in technology fields, ensuring that her legacy would be one of creation and not just tragedy. Detective Sarah Miller received a commendation for her work on the case. She became a vocal advocate for digital literacy in law enforcement, traveling the country to train other departments on how to look beyond the obvious evidence. She emphasized that in the 21st century, every object is a potential witness. From the thermostat on the wall to the watch on a wrist, the world is constantly recording. She warned that criminals are adapting, but so are the investigators who hunt them. The case of the digital trail highlights a profound shift in how we view privacy and justice. 20 years ago, Mark Stevens might have gotten away with murder. Without the GPS data, the woods were too vast to search effectively. Without the heart rate monitor, his alibi might have held up against scrutiny. Technology acted as the great equalizer, stripping away the lies and revealing the raw truth of human actions. It serves as a grim warning to those who think they can hide in the shadows. As we move forward into an increasingly connected future, the line between our physical and digital selves will continue to blur. We leave pieces of ourselves on servers and satellites every moment of every day. For most of us, this is just the price of modern convenience. But for those with secrets to hide, it is a constant threat. The silent observers are always watching, and they do not lie. They do not forget. And as Mark Stevens found out, they can lead the law directly to your door. This case also raises important questions about the surveillance state we live in. While we celebrate the capture of a killer, we must also acknowledge the sheer amount of data that corporations hold on us. The same tools that solved this murder are the tools that track our every move for profit. It is a double-edged sword that society is still learning to wield. But in the dark woods of Oregon on that cold November morning, no one was debating ethics. They were just thankful for the signal and the noise. The legacy of Elena Rodriguez lives on not just in the memory of those who loved her, but in the legal precedent set by her case. It established protocols for accessing cloud data in emergency situations and clarified the admissibility of wearable tech evidence in court. Her tragedy paved the way for justice in countless future cases. It is a small comfort in the face of such loss, but it is a comfort nonetheless. The truth, as it turns out, is often hidden in the code. So the next time you strap on your smart watch or sync your phone to your car, remember the story of the digital trail. Remember that you are creating a permanent record of your existence. It is a record that can exonerate the innocent and condemn the guilty. In a world where truth is often subjective, data remains an objective reality. It waits patiently in the cloud, ready to tell its story when the time comes. And sometimes that story is the only thing standing between a killer and their freedom. Detective Miller eventually retired from the force, but she kept the case file of Elena Rodriguez on her shelf as a reminder. A reminder that justice requires both human intuition and technological precision. She often looked at the map of the woods, the red line tracing the path of the killer, and marveled at how fragile the truth can be. If the watch had been uncharged, or the car had been older, the outcome would have been different. It was a convergence of factors that allowed the truth to surface. Ultimately, the murder of Elena Rodriguez was solved because the suspect underestimated the world he lived in. He believed he was the master of his technology, but in the end, he was its subject. The digital trail he left was invisible to his eyes, but glaringly obvious to the machines he wore. It is a haunting thought that our devices know us better than we know ourselves. They know where we go, and they know what we say, and they know how fast our hearts beat when we are burying our secrets. As the sun sets over the Douglas firs of Silver Creek, the town is quiet once again. The rain washes away the physical traces of the past, but the digital archives remain eternal. The story of the lakeside hacker and the perfect crime that wasn't is whispered as a cautionary tale. It is a story of hubris and detection and the inescapable nature of the modern world. We are all leaving a trail. The only question is, where does yours lead?